This presentation of the Pluris DLOM database will explain the motivation behind its creation, its construction, and finally, how it can best be applied in valuation situations. One of the main reasons we created this database is that we recognize some of the shortcomings of the others that are currently available on the market. Most of us at Pluris have done marketability discounts for a decade or more, and we've found that in dealing with the IRS, the questions asked are almost always, why don't you have more recent data? And why don't you have data that's more specific to your subject company? These problems have to do with getting the specifics for a subject company when you're forced to utilize a database that's too small. Because, of course, you must search for specific comps. For example, you can search by SIC code or by size or risk or volatility or some other type of measure, but then you wind up getting down to really small samples. You might only find one or two that have any kind of reasonable amount of comparability, and that could be a transaction that's 10, 20, even 30 years old. So we created the Pluris DLOM database to close this gap and address this need. We'll soon have close to 3,000 transactions, and that's increasing every quarter. We're adding data to the database every single calendar quarter, so you can count on transactions being added within 3 months of having taken place. And it covers 284 four-digit SIC codes with very wide coverage across the universal public companies that issue restricted stock. Since we launched this database, it's been published in a number of articles, valuation strategies, and other valuation publications, and has become a widely accepted methodology for getting to marketability discounts. Restricted stock studies have been around and utilized for 4 or 5 decades at least, and the Pluris DLOM database comes from the exact same bucket as these other studies. The methodology and the Pluris data itself have also been covered and discussed in valuation textbooks, whether it's Shannon Pratt or any of the other leading valuation textbooks that are used by the valuation community, and also presented at major valuation conferences such as NACFA, ASA, etc. One of the many great things we can do with the Pluris DLOM database is we can actually get to different levels of marketability. And there is a way with this data to actually get to a discount that is better tailored for private companies than can be achieved with ordinary marketability studies. Ordinary marketability studies tend to result in a discount that's a little bit too low for most private companies. The slide we're looking at right now has a breakdown of the discounts by quintile, and the Pluris DLOM database provides a great view of what the factors are that really drive the marketability discount, and it really boils down to risk and liquidity. Very large blocks of stock tend to have more significant discounts, precisely because they're more illiquid. It's harder to trade out of companies with small market caps that are also riskier in other ways. Small assets, weaker growth, high volatility, they all tend to have higher discounts. The unique thing about the Pluris DLOM database, though, is that we can go into the interface that we have here and take the application that ValueSource has built around it and take a good look at it. This application allows us to actually dig deep and do very minute searches for transactions that are more comparable to the subject company that we are valuing. So now we're going to demonstrate how we might do a discount in a simple 2-step analysis. First, we ask ourselves, if this were a public company, what would the discount be if it issued restricted stock? And second, if this were a private company, not a public company, how much would that fact add to the discount for lack of marketability? So there you go. That's really it. Now let's go to a quick demo of how the valuation software works. Okay, we're going to demonstrate how we would actually do a full marketability discount for a subject company that we're valuing. And we're going to start by searching for companies that are in a similar sector to the company we're valuing. Let's assume we're valuing an oil and gas company. First, we click on Sector, and that opens up a keyword box, and we just type in oil. That will show us companies in the oil and gas sector. Then what we can do once we pull these up is we can pull them up in Excel as well and take a look at them from there. So here we have all the companies pulled into Excel. We can look at each and every one of these transactions in more detail. we can look at overall statistics for the whole sample. If we scroll now all the way out here, we can look at the actual discounts for common stock. The average is 30.1%. The median is 30.8%. That is one estimate of the restricted stock equivalent discount. In other words, this is a private company that we're valuing. But if this were a public company instead issuing restricted stock, that's roughly the discount that we believe we would utilize. So, we pull up the restricted stock equivalent discount here. We've done a number of other analyses of the subject company we're looking at. We've typed in the characteristics of the company, for instance, total revenues $2.3 million, total assets $985,000, EBITDA $275,000, and so on. And what we get are indications out here to the right of the median and average discounts for those subgroups within the Pluris DLOM database. And then we take an average of those, and we get the 28.5%. As you saw before, that's very comparable to the indications that we got from the raw search for oil and gas companies. So again, we're within that same frame. Now we add an additional discount for the fact that this subject company that we're valuing is not a public company issuing restricted stock, it's a private company. So we add an increment for that additional lack of liquidity involved. That increment is shown here in the PEDI sheet of this spreadsheet. We are starting with 28.5%. We're adding an increment of 9.9%, which is drawn from this matrix here. And again, it comes right out of the Pluris DLOM database, where we look at marketability discounts for large blocks of restricted stocks versus small blocks of restricted stock. The difference between large block discounts and small block discounts is an analogy for the difference between private companies and public companies. And when we add this private equity discount increment to the restricted stock equivalent discount, we get 38% in this case. So that's the concluded discount for lack of marketability using the Pluris DLOM database. If you want to see more of the Pluris DLOM database, please join us for one of our webinars that are held each month.